before I get into my talk, I wanted to start off just by telling you two of so many stories where I've seen God in my own life. Why am I starting off with these stories? Because these are the things that, when things are difficult, when you're trying to share your faith with friends or colleagues, these are the things that I look back on and remember. Many years ago, I had gone through a very long and sad breakup of a relationship. And I was at a youth festival just like this. And the priest we had a healing ceremony, and the priest was coming around with Jesus with the Blessed Sacrament as part of this healing ceremony. And I was crying a lot. And my prayer was, Lord, if this is what you want, I just want a good, nice, holy husband. When I opened my eyes, a man sat down beside me, which at the time meant nothing. But 3 years later, I married that person. And this is what happened directly after I made that prayer to God. And He answered that prayer. Another small story is, again during this time, I got a new job. That was a really great job that I loved. And about a month into the job, I was away on a business trip. And my boss said to me, you know, Wendy, so many people interviewed for this job. It was a public relations job. He said people from London and all these big companies that were more experienced than me. He said, you know, one of the reasons that you got the job as well as your experience, I saw you had an article in the Alive newspaper, which is a free Catholic newspaper. And I was very shocked that he said this to me. That was the thing that made me think that you would be a good person for this work. So just two little moments where I felt God really was telling me, I'm with you and I have a plan, even when things seem difficult. Now, a short little game that I want to start off with. I want everybody to think of a car. Okay, so think of a car, your favorite car. If you could drive any car, what would it be? Okay, so a few people shout out. Come on, guys.
Audi.
Audi?
Range Rover.
Range Rover?
Mercedes?
Yeah.
Range Rover.
Range Rover?
Baby.
Yeah.
Bugatti.
Bugatti. Mine's Lamborghini. Mine's Lamborghini. Anybody else have their favorite car? Ferrari, yeah, that's good.
BMW.
Okay, lovely. So what's the point? When I ask you what your dream car is, your favorite car, everybody thinks of something different. Everybody says something different. These are the images in our minds that are there because of our individual experiences. And it's the same when it comes to so many different issues that we have to talk about as Catholics. If I said to a group of people, what do you think of when I say the Catholic Church? Maybe people here would think of positive things, nice things, good experiences. But in the secular world, you think often people have misguided visions and images of the Catholic Church. Yes? No?
Yes.
Yes? So it's our job oftentimes to try and change this understanding. You know, when I was coming back on to a journey of faith, the one thing that was very clear to me as I started to ask questions, it was when I first visited my brother when he was studying in seminary, and I was asking all the big questions that everybody has about life and faith. And I encourage people to do that this weekend. Ask questions. God wants us to look for answers. So ask them when you're here with so many wonderful people, priests and sisters, that may be able to answer these questions for you. That was the one big lesson I learned very early on. It's not what the church teaches, it was my understanding of it that was the problem. It's that I misunderstood so many beautiful teachings. And the only way for me to understand them better was to seek out the answers. So you play a huge role in this in sharing it with family and friends. My mother sent me this beautiful piece of scripture before I was doing a very big television interview on the pro-life issue. but I really did not want to do because it was a lot of pressure. One night when Paul was in Corinth, the Lord said to him, "Do not be afraid. Go on speaking and do not be silent, for I am with you." You see, this is one of the key things. God is always with us. You know, every time I do an interview, I always say a prayer to the guardian angel of the person that is opposing me. I ask my guardian angel to pray to their guardian angel, that there will be fruit from the discussion and that their hearts will be open and we can respect one another. During the abortion referendum in Ireland, one of the interviews that I did was on the biggest television programme in Ireland, watched by almost 1 million people every week. And when I got the phone call, they asked me to do it, very calmly on the phone, and said, yeah, When I hung up the phone, I cried, because I didn't want to do it. Even though I knew God had prepared me for a moment like this, but I did not want to do it because it was so much pressure to actually do this interview. And the most amazing thing happened. I was waiting in the dressing room of the television studio preparing, walking around, saying out loud my points, and I got a phone call saying a priest that I knew very well was very close by, and my friend came and collected me and took me to this priest, and he gave me confession and a blessing. I felt then a great peace. Before that I felt a lot of pressure, even though I had spent so much time preparing, but then I felt peace. The only way I can describe after getting that blessing and confession, yes, of course I was still nervous, but I knew now it was in God's hands. So what's the point? I'd done the work, hours and hours of preparation. That's one part. But the other part was prayer and connecting this up with my faith in God. Actually, the interview, everybody said, the best interview you've ever done. And I 100% believe it was from the grace I received before. And I think if that hadn't happened, it might have been a very different experience. So, have you ever been in a situation where you're at a dinner, or in a bar, or with friends, or in college or school, and a topic comes up that relates to your faith, and everybody stops and stares at you because they want to know what you, the Catholic, has to say. Have you ever felt that? Yeah. It's a scary feeling, right? When this happens, what do you want to do? Hide. You want a hole in the ground to open up so you can say bye, right? I'm sure everyone's been in this situation so many times. What I'm going to talk about today is how you will want to do the opposite. How you'll want to talk and engage with people. What was the last, can you remember the last topic when this happened? Or the last thing?
Gay marriage.
Yeah, maybe something to do with abortion or gay marriage or difficult things. Now you see, instead of seeing this as a scary thing, it's actually an opportunity. Why do I say that? It's an opportunity to have a broader discussion. Every time there's controversy, people are interested and they're asking questions. So other than that, a lot of the time, are people going to sit down with you and ask you about your faith? Probably not a lot of the time. So it might start off as a controversial topic, and you then are able to broaden it into a wider discussion about your faith. When it comes to the current time, the context changes in it feels like every year rather than every decade. But we still have the same challenge that has always been the case. How do we, as Catholics, how does the Church communicate unchanging truths in a world that seems to be constantly changing so fast? These are truths that will never ever change. Friends, here today you have a very important role in the Church. In my opinion, one of the most important. You are the future of the Church. Young people have to lead other young people. You are the ones that have to be the witness. You are the ones that have to share your faith. You know, every time I do an interview with somebody about their faith, where they tell me amazing stories or give a testimony, I always ask them, what is the one thing that helps you to continue when it's sometimes difficult? And they always say, having friends, being connected up to communities, so you have support for one another. So make lots of friends this weekend, so you can support one another. One lie that the world would like to tell you is that young people are not interested in faith. I have found this to be the complete opposite. I think now more than ever young people are hungry for faith. They are beginning to get tired of how superficial the world is. For example, in Ireland recently there was a huge study asking young people questions about faith. It was one of the largest they've ever done, just done last year. And the biggest thing that was found was my own experience. They just didn't know about faith. They just didn't understand it. Because we have a whole generation, perhaps their parents, that were not educated in their faith, were not catechized. This might seem like, this is terrible. But actually it's an opportunity. Because many of these young people are like a blank canvas, just ready to hear what you have to share with them. I think we can either do two things. We can complain about the false ideas or sometimes caricatures about how the media or friends portray Catholic people, or we can learn about our faith and use the tools in order to be able to share it. Pope Benedict once said, "We have heard so much about what is not allowed, now it's time to talk about what is positive about what the Church has to offer." So when controversy comes your way, seize it as an opportunity. One thing that Pope Francis talked about in 2013 was creative apologetics. I think now more than ever you have the chance to do this. Even now, I would say I'm a young person, you're young, really young. So even now there's many things online and social media that maybe I can't understand that you can use to share with people. He talks about proclaiming our faith in the missionary key. Do you see yourself as missionaries? Probably not. Hopefully by the end of the weekend you will. Does a missionary, what do you think of when you think of a missionary? What's the image that comes into your head? Maybe priests and sisters?
You have to talk about your faith and you have to light the fire.
Yeah. It's simple. Sometimes you don't even, St. Francis says, when necessary, use words. Sometimes you just being you and being confident in that is enough. I know certainly in my own marriage, because of the choices that we made, people saw that there was something different there. So different to what the world asks us to do. And expecting things to go wrong. Like, didn't live together before you got married? Then we get married. You're fighting all the time? Is it awful? No, actually, it's great. The Church actually gives us so much in my life. I mean, we have groups of friends, married couples groups that meet and support one another, things for my children. So many things that I feel people are missing out on. Have you ever tried to think about what makes people who might criticize your faith tick? What's going on in their heads? Or are you just thinking, oh, they just want to argue with me. They're against me. I think a lot of the time this is the way we see the other person as like an enemy. But a lot of the time when we're having these discussions, you actually have a shared value. We call this when we're training people for interviews, but it's the same when you're just talking to people, looking for the positive intention. Obviously, I'm thinking a lot about the abortion issue because we've just had a referendum. So people on the other side, I know that it's fair to say for a lot of them, we have a shared positive intention. What is that? We care about women. They think their ideas are what's best for women. So that's what we share. So what's my job then? To start from that point of the thing that we share. By saying, I know you want what's best for women, what's most positive for them. But let me tell you about some of the research that shows the negative impacts of abortion on women, for example. It's always good to start from a point of commonality, of things that we both can understand in one another. If you start a discussion of being an enemy, as Father Nicholas said at the start, There's no point in being a witness if there's no fruit. So here's one key thing to remember the next time you want the hole to open up. When you're talking about your faith, it's about witnessing, not winning. Our human nature, when a discussion happens, we want to win. We want to beat the person. We want to be the smartest, the most intellectual. And sometimes that means a very angry debate where you're actually fighting with the other person. Now, do you think if you're fighting with the other person, even if you feel like you've won because you had better points than them, do you think they're going to want to have an encounter with Jesus after that discussion? This doesn't mean that you gently talk about your experience. It just means your focus is to witness rather than win the argument. So think about that the next time. Witnessing, not winning. Another way of putting it is shedding light, not heat. So you have two choices. Will I use this opportunity for people to learn something new that they never knew before? Or will I simply have a fight with the person? So the next time that controversial topic comes up, well, you have to do the work first. And you're going to have a lot of great talks this weekend where you're going to be learning about why we believe what we believe. Then the challenge is to share that, but in a way that's reaching out rather than trying to build a wall. Because ultimately, what is your aim? Do you want people to walk away from a conversation thinking about that? I often say, sometimes you have to do very little because you are all young, intelligent, lovely people. Sometimes, whether it's a family event or something in school or college, it is enough that there is a young, intelligent person gently sharing about their faith to actually make people go, wow, I really thought, Catholics were just 95-year-old ladies with their rosary beads. Sometimes that's enough to make people think. You, without doing anything, are already a witness. So think of the power that you can have through the grace of God if you first learn more about your faith and then you think, this is not an argument. I'm going to shed light, not heat. I will witness and not focus on winning the argument. I know it's difficult because society is becoming more and more secular. The interesting thing here is, often it seems, and often people have abandoned the church's values, but unconsciously people are adhering to those values sometimes. They're there unconsciously that we need to almost reawaken. Even if someone hasn't practiced their faith for years, these truths that I mentioned earlier are written on our hearts. It doesn't matter where you're from, what continent, God has written them on our hearts. And sometimes you're the one that might help reawaken them. So it's good to think of, when issues come up, broaden the discussion. How do you actually do this? Well, I like to tell people to think in threes. So what does that mean? When you're learning about various topics. Okay, so let's say the topic is AIDS in Africa, right? And you learn about that. Wouldn't it be better to think of three great things that the church is doing in Africa? Like the millions of people that they're educating, or the quarter of hospitals that they run, or the education programs. You see, you don't need to be an encyclopedia of knowledge about your faith. When you think of the big issues, think in threes. If you can start by trying to know three things about some of the more difficult topics, that helps you kind of get off to a good start. And then you can move your discussion into, you know what? Faith makes my life better. Why did I tell you about this great weekend I was just at in Luxembourg? Use it as an opportunity to talk in a broader way. One of the key things about good communication is people don't remember what you said, but how you made them feel. Think about, I don't know, the last news story that you saw or heard, generally people won't say, oh, it's that very interesting government report about statistics on economics. No. It's usually a story, an emotive story about something that has happened. People don't remember what you said, it's how you make them feel. So even if everything you are saying is right and well informed, if you are aggressive, for example, or if you're not interested in the other person, are you just interested in talking as much as you possibly can, or are you genuinely interested in this other person who is also a child of God? Have you given them time to ask questions? Have you been loving towards them even when it's really hard? Because it is hard. Again, this is not about being a wallflower or a carpet to be walked on. If we really believe the truth that God has revealed to us, that we are all a child of God, then that respect will come into your discussions. And I think that's really important. Maybe people, remember I asked you earlier what do you think people think of when they think of the Catholic Church? You are the ones who can challenge this. Maybe sometimes people think of the Church as a kind of moral policeman waving the baton. You can change their perception. Maybe for me, I talk about an experience at World Youth Day in Poland, where there was millions of young people from every continent. I've never been at an event where there was so much joy. No drink, no drugs, no problems. People just genuinely joy-filled with their faith. So I'll talk about that. Say, it's really a shame that most people don't know things like this happen. Let me tell you about it. Even people lining the streets in Poland, it was so hot, handing out bottles of water. They were so happy that the Pope was coming and that there were so many young people in their country. One of the most difficult but most important things is it's not about you. When these discussions come up, it's not about you. Probably one of the hardest parts of the human condition to try and work on is pride. Why do we want to jump into the hole sometimes? Because we're worried about what people will think of us. We're worried about what they'll say. But when I realize it's not about me, see, take my ego and put it on the back seat. It's not about me. It's about witnessing to my faith. That's the hardest thing to do, but it's the most important. And anyway, when things don't go well, when you do end up slamming the door and walking away and then thinking, oh, I don't think I did the Lord any favours there, or myself, that's okay too. Because when things go wrong, or when we fail, it destroys that illusion that this communication depends on us. It depends on God. When we start to trick ourselves into thinking that it's about me, that's when things go wrong. One of the words that Pope Francis uses is called parousia, which basically means to have a bold apostolic courage. When you think of your faith and sharing it, do you have courage or are you nervous? Are you scared? Nervous or have courage? You have to make that choice. And the only way you will get courage is through prayer, through asking for it. Ask God for courage. You know how stupidly so many times I did an interview and afterwards thought, I can't believe I didn't pray before that. I don't know how people without faith do these things on the television. Because now I always pray. I do my preparation and then I ask the Holy Spirit to guide it. I think the best conversations are ones where you say, I don't really remember exactly what I said. Because it's the Holy Spirit guiding you. But you have to ask for courage. Ask God for it. And He'll give you it. We also have another choice. We can decide this is great this weekend, isn't it? Where we're all together, we're making friends, we're learning a lot about our faith. Now we can decide when we go home to be turned in on ourselves and go back to our different countries and not share this with anyone. We could be nervously turned in on ourselves, that's one choice. Or we can be a people of faith that goes out to, as Pope Francis says, the peripheries. What does that mean? Well, probably lots of your friends are in the peripheries. Do you think a lot of young people are happy today? Do you see a lot of pain among your friends? Do you want to share your faith with them because I want them to agree with me? Or do you want friends to have the joy and the happiness that you've experienced? There's a big difference between the two. That, for me, so often I see friends with so much heartache with how they're living their lives, searching, as I once did, for happiness in all the wrong places. So if you're just simply sharing what's made you, given you joy and peace, or even just being where God is helping you through difficult times, through suffering as well. There was a really interesting book that I read in college called Bowling Alone, which was about the collapse and revival of the American community. And it was written by a sociologist from Harvard University. And basically what the book concluded was what we all know. Faith makes life and community better. A lot of people don't know that. Because people of faith tend to get more involved with their communities, with volunteering, with helping people. There's so many positives about our faith, and we tend to focus on the negatives. So I hope this weekend you spend a lot of time learning about that. It's very hard when, I think it was Pope Benedict talked about the dictatorship of relativism, which basically has led to some really awful things, like, for example, Catholic adoption agencies in some countries having to close down because government said you can't keep running unless you give some of the children up for adoption to homosexual couples, for example. Sometimes it's really hard. This morning I got the news that it looks like the abortion referendum will pass in Ireland, which means now our country, which was a beacon of hope for countries all over the world, will no longer be that beacon. I have spent the last 5 years working endlessly for this cause. I was completely done yesterday. I felt I had nothing left to give. Am I heartbroken? Yes. Would I do it all again, even knowing that this is the result? Yes. Yes, I would. For two reasons. One, perhaps during all those discussions and controversies, we still managed to change some hearts and minds. Maybe there was a young woman who was in an unplanned pregnancy and decided to keep going after hearing something in all this debate. What can I do now? Well, as a mother, individually I know the type of person I will raise my son to be and any other children I'm blessed with. The second thing is trusting in God. You know, last week when I was at Mass, a friend said to me, I know everyone has worked so hard, but the battle is won, no matter what happens. And we have to trust in God's plan. And that does give me peace and hope for the future. Does it mean the work will stop now? No. It's probably going to be more work now than ever. I can't imagine having fought this particular battle without that trust and faith in God. You know, in knowing that with all the people who work so hard, He is pleased. He is pleased. So, even though it's not easy, it's always worth it for you. All of you have been given individual gifts. If you told me 10 years ago that I'd be coming to Luxembourg, speaking at a youth event about my faith and defending my faith, I would think that I would just laugh. I would never have believed it. When I look back on what God has done in my life, and now through my work, the stories are so many of how I have seen God work in so many young people's lives as well. That for me is one of the great proofs of His existence, just looking at what He has done for me. So we need to have that gratitude. I hope you know that you are the future. I said it earlier. But without you, without young people, just living your life according to your faith, there is no future for the church, because we need you. We need you to have courage. We need you to have those conversations in humility where you care about being the witness rather than winning the war. We need you to have responsibility for learning about your faith. And you're going to do that this weekend. So remember to witness, not win. Shed light, not heat. Learn. Try to think in threes. So then when a topic comes up, you have the 3 points in your head and you're able to start the talk and then talk broader about positive experiences of your faith. So I hope that's given you something to think about. Once it was funny, I think it was the Church of Ireland minister when the Eucharistic Congress, or maybe the Pope visiting the UK, asked the question, they're always interested in what the Catholics have to say. They never really come to us when these things happen. And that was when I was involved with the group. It's called Catholic Voices, probably in a lot of your own countries. Why? Because the church matters. The Catholic Church matters everywhere. People are intrigued by it. So, are you going to help them continue? Or are you going to jump into the hole? Which are you going to do? Because you have to make that choice. If you prepare yourself the next time that happens, you'll think, great, here's an opportunity to talk about my faith and to share about it, rather than wanting to run away and seeing a hole through the wall of your body. So I hope through this weekend, through some of the things I've said, that you will not want to jump into that.